You are in the lounge. Welcome to the Hoops Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Justin Rowan, with my co-host, Phil Boileau. Phil, how you doing today, buddy?
I am fantastic. Quick question. You get 10 total shots to make this happen. If you make even one, you get $20 million. But if you miss all 10 shots, you go to jail for 2 whole years. Do you take the shot?
Well, where's the shot coming from? That's the
Half
important
court.
thing. Half court?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm taking it.
All right. And we're
Worth it. Worth it.
and we're ready to start.
Perfect. I love it. Um, One guy that would not be afraid to take that shot is Carmelo Anthony, who obviously has been getting a lot of spotlight this week with Team USA. He's become the all-time leading scorer in Olympic competition, a tremendous achievement. Barring the unforeseen, it looks like he is going to get his third gold medal. He's had one hell of an international career, one hell of a career in the NCAA, but the success at the NBA level hasn't been where it's been projected, especially when he started off his career, which at this point, people are starting to speculate, trying to figure out where exactly he ranks. He weighed in on it recently, saying that he doesn't need to win an NBA title to be a great player. Phil, when you hear that, what's your initial reaction to Carmelo saying that he doesn't need to win a championship to cement his legacy as a great player?
I mean, I think in general it's a good idea. People look in the mirror and realize that they are who they are and they're not actually going to get to that level. Um, look, just to be fair, Carmelo Anthony is an elite scorer. He came out of Syracuse, came with the Denver Nuggets, had a better than average team there with Nene, a young JR, and other pieces there. Even got to play with an older Iverson.
Yep,
But to
Chauncey
me,
Billups.
yeah, Chauncey Billups, exactly. But to me, he's never been that guy who can lead or be the main guy. But he's always commanded the attention and the money of that. Like, I know you can compare him to some other guys who are score first players, but to me, he doesn't bring that it factor. To me, he's all about, the stardom. He's all about, him, Lala, the big lights, New York. It's never seemed like,
Yeah, but what great player doesn't have some element of that? Like that's a big deal for Kobe Bryant. That's why he forced his way out of Charlotte. Like to me, when you look at Carmelo's career and you say he's never really been the guy, there was a small period there where he was a legitimate peer to LeBron James, who he came into the league at the same time with. To me, the biggest crime
I
for
think that was only
Carmelo.
draft day that they were on the same level, to be fair.
No, there in their careers, like LeBron was the better player. He deserved Rookie of the Year, but there was a time there before LeBron got it all together that Carmelo was a peer, if not at the exact same level. He was in that top five player category, at least in my mind. He was in that category. And to me, his biggest crime has been he's never had the opportunity to have a peer on his team, to be either a number two or have a 1A that could help carry him because he had an impressive Western Conference Finals run. He had a deep Eastern Conference run as well whenever he's had good teams around him. I think too much blame has gone on Carmelo Anthony. You look at the coaches he's had. George Karl's been great, but George Karl's never got over the hump. He had Mike D'Antoni in New York, who he eventually pushed out, but Mike D'Antoni isn't exactly somebody that's shown that he can win at an NBA level either, or at least a championship. So to me, it just feels unfair, everything that's been put on Carmelo.
Okay, I'm surprised that you're saying this of all people with the fandom you have of the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James and all the garbage he gets put on him for not, doing XYZ, even though he does the rest better than every player in the league. When you're looking at Carmelo, to me, like I get his skills and I get when he first came out of the gates, he was ranked higher than we'd rank him now because he had a very NBA ready skill. He could hit jump shots, he could create an isolation. And in the NBA at that point, isolation offense was a big thing. And, there's the argument saying that did the NBA and its style of play kind of outgrow Carmelo Anthony more than is Carmelo Anthony not the player we think he is? But to me, it's just I've never seen him. Look, there are a lot of good players. Like if you want to talk about with LeBron James, like I think almost every team Carmelo Anthony's been on has been better than the LeBron James year with Cleveland. What was it, 2007, 8, where he took them to the finals, and they were just like, in my opinion, garbage. Like at least he had the Billups or the Iversons or the
Yeah, well,
Nenes.
like that's true. The teams he had in Denver were better, but at the same time, LeBron James was going through a weaker Eastern Conference, right? Like he was going through the Washington Wizards, what was left of the New Jersey Nets. Detroit was an impressive win, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you look at the West, LeBron got swept in the finals because he ran into the juggernaut San Antonio Spurs. And if the Phoenix Suns would have got through, the Suns would have swept the Cavs. Like I understood that going into the
I don't
year.
know if the
That team
Suns sweep the
overachieved.
Cavs. The Cavs.
Oh,
I don't know. I'm not sure.
they
Like,
didn't come close that year. That year, the Suns crushed them. You know what? Even the Spurs said that the Suns should have won that year.
yeah.
That they just had the wrong breaks. Things didn't go for well for Phoenix, but they would have swept the Cavs. Carmelo, when he had those better teams in the West was better than those teams. In no situation was it like Carmelo Anthony and the Nuggets are the clear favorites. And it's a team game. It's not all on one player.
Okay, I get you there, and maybe I'll give you that part with the Nuggets. And I'm looking at his career stats here. Look, he can score with a lot of guys in the league. He's got some great numbers, but when he went to New York, it was supposed to be his team. He had some other guys going, and realistically, like, was that not the point he was supposed to take the next step? Like I think he's just never took that. I don't know how to explain it past being a great player who could be your leading scorer and arguably your and well, not very arguably your best player, but he never turned that corner where all the greats do. That turn into that leader, turn into that guy people fear. Like I feel people fear Carmelo Anthony in isolation scoring, but there's so many other aspects of offense that I just feel he didn't add to his game as he developed the way some other stars did.
Hmm.
Like
I
his
get
passing, like his rebounding's okay. You know, he was never really a great stealer or shot blocker. And when you look at his
his
athleticism,
rebounding was good for wing, and he did have that great rebounding year with New York where he was playing primarily power forward.
it was
And I think
2013-14, 8.1 rebounds.
right. I think he should have been playing power forward earlier. And how you mentioned how you believe that the league has passed him by. I
Hmm.
don't think the league's passed him by because the league is going towards guys like him playing at power forward. Like I think if you swap him for Kevin Love last year, the Cavs are a better team. But I think when you're talking about him not taking that next step, that was a criticism that Dirk Nowitzki had. Everyone was like, all Dirk does is score. He doesn't play defense. He isn't a particularly
Yeah,
strong
but he had that
rebounder for his
fire at
position.
least with him. You could see that passion go. Like, look, I'm not
Is,
saying
is that revisionist history though? Just because he had that one year where the proper team was actually put around him and they won in 2011. If that doesn't happen, are we questioning Dirk's fire? Is the
was his
stereotypes
team
of
there in
typical
2011 really
European.
better than the team that Melo had in Denver? Like, I kind of enjoyed the pieces he had in Denver more than Dirk. Like Dirk's team was nice, but it's not like he had amazing superstars. Like he had an aging kid. He had, Tyson Chandler, who that was a huge mistake not signing him the next year. But but apart from that, it wasn't these massive play. Like I think he really stood up. He took the team on his shoulders, and and,
Well, you know
and
what? Like Haran Butler was great. Jason Terry was great. They had Sean Marion. Like you're talking about a lot of like Marion's probably a Hall of Fame
but they
player.
were all
Tyson
over
Chandler
like past their prime at that point, right?
still making a pretty big impact. Like you look at even Jason Kidd at that point. I believe he was getting about like 15, 16, and 8 at that time. Sean Marion, like he locked up LeBron James in the finals. Like, and they had fantastic coaching. Rick Carlisle, you're talking about one of the best coaches to ever sit on a bench, where Carmelo had George Karl. And in 2011, at that point, it was a different Western Conference. He didn't have to go through the prime, Pau Gasol, Kobe, Andrew Bynum, Lamar Odom. Like the Lakers were still a dominant force at that time. And maybe if he got through, maybe if the timing was better, he'd get to go to the finals and play a weaker Eastern Conference team. I just think the stars have never aligned for Carmelo Anthony, and I don't think that's necessarily on him. Like, let's see if you agree with this. Right now, I believe Carmelo Anthony is a surefire Hall of Fame player. Do you agree?
I I think if that's the case, it's a really weak standard. I just don't think he's done enough.
Well, it's a
Like,
basketball Hall of Fame. It's not just for the NBA, right?
but he's gonna get the international treatment because of what he's done on that stage. I don't know. Like, I kind of believe on some level. Like, okay, look, on a
Oh, you mean
basketball hall.
when he was playing with talent?
Sorry.
I said you mean when he was playing with talent.
Yeah, fair
He got it
enough.
done on that stage when he was playing with talent. Like I I really hope, and not to take anything away from the Knicks, because I think they've actually done a lot of smart moves. I'm not a huge fan of the Derrick Rose trade, but I think overall the Knicks have done a pretty good job. But I want Carmelo off of that team. I know he has the no trade clause, and it's about whether or not he wants to
I
get out
can't
of there.
believe he didn't go to Chicago when he re-signed. I would have loved him to have been there. Ironically, with Derrick Rose, but I thought that him going
And
there.
Joakim Noah.
Yeah, exactly. But him going there with a Pau Gasol and with some other guys, like I thought the team around that kind of suited him a little bit more
Yeah.
than the team. And and to me that was when you look at his decision, I think that was quintessential Carmelo Anthony. His decision to go from either the Chicago, where in my opinion had a much better chance of winning and adding that ring and really adding to his NBA repertoire, or staying in New York and just being the guy. I think he just likes being the cool guy who makes a ton of money. Look, it is a business, and you can't fault a guy for maximizing his paycheck. I get that. And I get his girlfriend slash wife wants to be there. I get he loves New York. I get all these things. But at a certain level, when the Knicks don't build around you, I think as a great player, I don't know if you just stay there and take it. Like we saw KG leave at a certain point because he realized that Minnesota wasn't doing it for him, right? Like you can't compare that to teams like with Dirk, how they were constantly throwing money at guys around him. Look, they swung and missed a lot, but at least they put a lot of effort into it. And guys like David Lee are never going to cut it. And then pulling way back to guys who don't win rings, Stockton, Malone, no one's ever going to argue that Malone would have ever been in a better situation than with Stockton and the other way around. So for me, him especially having a no trade clause, it is kind of, it just seems a little spoiled to me. I don't know. I just can't feel it. Like the fact that he puts all this emphasis on the world game where there's so much attention on the other players and he doesn't have to be the guy. Look, he happened to be, he hit all these shots and he was really hot and he played fantastic basketball. I get it. But he didn't have to be the guy on that team. He just happened to be the guy on that team.
Right. But I think that benefits a lot of players. Like LeBron James excelled in Miami where he didn't have to do everything. And I think that's turned him into a more well-rounded player. And I just don't believe Carmelo Anthony's ever had that opportunity, which I guess it's so hard to debate these hypotheticals because we can't go back in time. We can't throw Carmelo. We can't have Carmelo drafted by the Detroit Pistons. As much as I'd love him drafted there instead of Darko and see what happens, because I think if Detroit drafts Carmelo Anthony, they at least win one more ring than they did, and they have probably one or two more finals appearances
If
than they
they
had in
know
the
how
current.
these players turn out how they are they actually picking Melo over Bosh or Wade, do you think? Because
I
they had a younger Rip Hamilton and a little bit older Wallace brothers. Like, I think they would have been
those guys
I think
still
they would
had
have
a
been really
long.
tempted to go with Chris Bosh personally.
Those guys still had quite a bit left though. Like I really think that I mean because
Well, then how about
they were
Dwayne
drafted
Wade? Like he's a little bit
2003.
older. He was 2 years older
Yeah.
than Melo coming out, a little bit more seasoned coming out of Marquette. You knew you could stick him in. Like imagine Dwayne Wade being that six man behind Billups and Hamilton just attacking like him and Billups. I mean, together that would have been one of
I
the
just think
toughest.
Carmelo slots in perfectly instead of Tayshaun Prince next to Rip Hamilton and those guys.
Oh, and also he could play
And
the four,
again,
I
if he's
guess.
drafted into a winning situation, maybe our perception of Carmelo Anthony is higher than where we currently perceive Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. Because Chris Bosh was not regarded as highly as he is now because he went to Miami and he started winning. So I just think if we could rewrite the history books and we could put him there, I think our perception would have changed.
Actually, I'll ask you this for that same exact point you just brought up. What's better, Denver Melo or Toronto Bosh? Right? Because if you're gonna
Mello,
say that,
Mello. He took his team further.
he
He took his
definitely
team
had more
further
help.
in
He
a
definitely
harder
had more help.
conference, and he was damn near unstoppable. And I know people harp on the defense. It's not like he doesn't play any defense at all. But I always hear people say, well, if he was as good at defense as he is offense, and his offense was as bad as his defense, as no one would talk about. That's great. That's cute to say. I get it's half the game. But you know what? It's tougher. What he does on offense is tougher than defense. There are fewer people capable of what he is able to do on the offensive side of the floor than there are guys that can play competent defense. Because you look at great defenders and stuff, you look at Kawhi Leonard, at the end of the day in a playoff series, Kevin Durant is still going to score on
But as
Kawhi
an
Leonard, no matter
individual
how.
scorer, right? Does he make the other players better? Does he swing the ball? Like when you're
I
saying,
think he takes pressure off of them. I think the assist total is a misleading thing. Yes, he's all about himself. Yes, the ball stops with him, but I think that takes pressure off of him. And I think if you had the right coaching, the right team around him, it benefits him.
I think we're gonna agree to disagree on this one,
Well,
but you
okay.
know what?
So
Look,
so we're talking about whether or not if it would change if he had the right team. We might as well transition into the Knicks this season. I've already said I'm not a huge fan of the Derrick Rose move, but I actually like the Brandon Jennings pickup. I think Courtney Lee is a great underrated player. He's going to get more attention being in New York now. Joakim Noah, I don't know how much he has left. Tingus Pingus, Kristaps Porzingis. I
who
mean,
looks like he's put on weight, been working in it with his back to the basket game.
he's great. He's
Hey,
great. So
a quick question, Courtney Lee. If that trade had happened last year, allowing him to go to, was it last year or the year before, to OKC for a first round pick? Does
I don't recall
OKC?
that.
Yep, it was super close, and then they said it was either, oh, was it him or a Flalo? I'm forgetting. It's definitely one of them.
A flawless.
Okay, it was okay. Uh, so I speak out of turn there, but yeah, no, I think Courtney Lee's a big time player, but I don't know how you can hate on the Derrick Rose signing. Like they kind of got him on the cheap.
How did they get him on the cheap? They traded Robin Lopez, who, for the record, is better than Joakim Noah at this point of his career, and then they get Derrick Rose for one season and his big contract, he either underperforms and maybe you sign him for cheap, or he starts to play better. He's not going to be MVP Derrick Rose. I don't think there's any possibility of that. But because of his name value and the cap jumping up even higher, you're going to have to overpay him. So I really don't see a great solution there because if you look at the numbers, he was basically bootleg Jordan Clarkson last year. I think you'd be better off keeping Robin Lopez, and as much as I hate him as a player,
How do you hate Robin
Rajon.
Lopez? He has like the best
No, no,
hairdo
no,
in the
no, no,
league.
no, no. As much as I hate this guy as a player, you'd be better off keeping Robin Lopez and signing Rajon Rondo, because at least with Rondo, you have a point guard that a pass first point guard that can't shoot, rather than a shoot first point guard that can't shoot.
Or you could have just waited to sign Brandon Jennings and actually start Brandon Jennings,
Yeah,
I
I
suppose.
if the better player starts, Brandon Jennings should be starting for the Knicks. But they're not going to do that because they have their flashy name in Derrick Rose. They have their super
I think
team.
they're going to be pretty good this year, and I think Brandon Jennings is going to fight for that sixth man of the year. I think Derrick Rose is going to play at least 70 games, and I think we're going to see a lot of guys who don't have rings, who have had success in different aspects of their game, who are going to come together. I think, look, I'm not a fan at all, but I think we're going to see a more humbled, more team-oriented Melo come in.
Yeah.
I think he's finally been surrounded by some talent. I think Kristaps is taking another jump as maybe a top, to work with me here, maybe 15, 4, 5 in the league. Does that make sense? 20?
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
Because he looks like he's put on some weight working on his back to the basket game. Can
I'm
step
not
out.
comfortable. No, not top 24 or 5 yet, because even if he does play like, let's say, good individual defense, it takes bigs a while to understand the full team concept. And like you look at the rookies last year, Carl Anthony Towns, both Towns and uh, Nurkic,
Yep.
both of those guys were clearly better than Porzingis. I know Porzingis got more fanfare than Nurkic, but Nurkic simply had the better season. Given the talent that's in the league right now,
But if you're talking
it's
ceiling,
not been.
right? Like
But
I would say he's got a better ceiling
a
than
starter.
Nurkic.
He's going to be a legitimate starter.
He's going to be a legitimate starter, and I think this team, to me, the thing that hurts his ability to really take over where I think he could is I think Rose and and Melo actually cannibalize a lot of the shots that, in my mind, should be going to him. Um, but I actually like the idea of having Courtney Lee and Joakim Noah, two guys who don't need the ball, next to three guys who constantly do. I think the
Yeah.
balance is there, and I think the scoring off the bench. I think it's going to be really weird to look at how they coach this team and how the offense plays. But
See, like for
you've
me
got a
right
bunch of
now, it
guys who can
feels like
hit jump
I feel
shots.
I feel like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat right now because the way you're hyping up this Knicks team, it feels like you are setting Carmelo Anthony up to disappoint you when this Knicks team misses the playoffs because you're going to be like, look at all the help he had. I like the Rose pickup, I like the Noah pickup.
Hell yeah,
I
and he
I
deservedly
don't
so.
no,
Look, he
they are
finally
not a
has the guy.
playoff
He has
team.
a 3 and D 2. He's got a one that can score. He's got a five that sure is
Rose can't
broken.
score well though. Like he's not an efficient player. He
Maybe
doesn't
you
fit
could say that because look,
because he's bad.
he's not bad. He's just getting off a really bad injury. He
He
look,
was a
look,
net negative last year.
he was
He
with
did
Jimmy
not help
Butler.
his team play
All
basketball.
the offense came from the backcourt. I mean, they did have Powell and such, but I don't know. I think the balance will make it there. I think with so much attention on Melo and Kristaps, I think Rose is going to get a whole lot of open shots. If he can knock them down, it's a big question to your point. But I think there can be some interesting pick and pop situations between them three. Some massive look. Joakim knows how to set screens. Courtney Lee knows his role. Like I think we're we're not going to see. I don't think there's an all-star really that comes out of that team because I think they cannibalize each other's points. Like maybe Melo, but
He'll be Mel.
yeah, man, I hate Melo. But like I'm just saying, I think when you look in the East, I know I'm being bullish about it, but I not only see playoffs, I think they're better than a couple teams that we could maybe say like, okay, like
Oh,
in the East, like right away, for sure Cleveland's better, absolutely. Uh,
okay. Right off the top of my head, Cleveland, Toronto, Boston, Pacers. I'd put Washington above them. Detroit, Atlanta, Charlotte. You got a good Milwaukee team that might be in the running
I
if
think you're
everything comes
starting
together.
to. I think you're starting to pull at straws at this point. Like right after you said Toronto and Cleveland. Like to me, those are the only two teams that for sure are fantastic. Like
Boston?
Boston for as good as they did. Yeah, they got Horford, but I still don't like the part. I still think if everything runs right, I think the ceiling for New York is higher than Boston.
Oh, I think if everything goes right, we have Cleveland and New York in the first round. I think if every break goes their
Oh, so
way,
you're saying
the
they're
Knicks
barely
stays.
going to squeak into the
Their
playoffs,
ceiling
where
is
I
the
think
eight
they're
seed.
going to be like a 4 or 5 seed.
Their ceiling is an eight seed, in my opinion.
Man,
That's their best case
I
scenario
think
because
that's their
if you look at
floor.
all these
I think
teams,
their ceiling is 4. I think their floor is 8. I think there's too much talent to not make that work, and there's too much playoff minutes. Like, sure, massive injuries could happen, and I've made this call last year with Miami, and massive injuries did happen. So
yep.
bad on me. But I don't know. I just think if Derrick Rose can become 2/3 of what he was, and Chris Stapps can just keep improving at any kind of a regular level, and you get Noah to play at least 70 games.
My God. Like, see, the thing is, Noah, 2 years ago, he managed to stay on the court, but he wasn't an effective player. He just wasn't good. Last year, he wasn't good, and then he couldn't stay on the court. His season was cut short. I just don't see him bouncing back, especially at his age. Even if he bounces back, I think it wouldn't happen next year. I think it would take
If they
time
had
for that
kept
to come.
Robin Lopez and had Brandon Jennings as a starting point guard, where do they fall for you at that point?
If they had Robin Lopez, Brandon Jennings, Courtney Lee, and maybe they signed somebody else instead of making the move for Rose,
Sure.
um, I would feel better about them being an eight seed. But they're going to
Okay,
start
but
Rose.
feeling
They're
better.
going.
I mean, you're essentially saying the same thing, just maybe
No,
like
I still don't believe
just
they
like a
would be a
one
playoff
percent
team.
kick up.
I would not pick them as a lock to make the playoffs because, as I said, I think Cleveland, Toronto, Boston, the Pacers, Detroit, Atlanta, Charlotte for sure are better. I think Washington's there. Chicago's going to be in the mix. Milwaukee's going to be in the mix. There's just too many teams that are better. Orlando might be good with
The
Serge
Serge Ibaka
Ibaka.
show.
Yeah, I mean Orlando's
Does
got a
this
lot
not
of
just
pieces
prove
there,
my point,
and they
though?
have better coaching in Frank Vogel. So I think there's a lot of teams, it's going to be tight because I think there's like maybe 8 or 9 teams after Cleveland and Toronto that could make the playoffs or could miss the playoffs if things break their way. But I just think New York has one of the more shaky cases, in my opinion.
I just think this makes my point for Carmelo Anthony with this much talent still. I don't know. I think
But
a
I
lot of
don't
those
think it's
I
this
think a
much
lot of those teams you
talent.
just named don't
These
have
are
the talent.
names. This is like saying, "Oh, the Lakers, they had they had Malone, they had Gary Payton." No, they didn't have those guys. That's like saying, "Oh, the
Or the
Magic
other
or the
year,
Raptors had Hakeem Olajuwon."
they
Like that's
definitely
basically
had.
what they got here, man.
And technically, they had Alonzo Mourning for about a minute in that Vince Carter trade years back.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to wrap things off with a new segment for the podcast. Phil is going to come up with a trade idea. He's going to pitch a trade idea to me, and we're going to see whether or not we agree with it, where the merits are, who it benefits. So, what are you going to hit me with, Phil?
Okay, I'm playing GM, and I'm gonna stick with the New York Knicks. So I would pretend to be the GM, but let's not pretend he has any play. So I'm James Dolan. I'm sitting down with Carmelo Anthony. I'm like, hey Melo, this is not working out. This is Kristaps teams now. Um, we're gonna ship you on your way, and I really need you to waive that no trade. So Melo's like, well, of course, Mr. Dolan, you have sage advice in basketball, everything, so I will allow you to do this. And then I'm looking around and I'm like, listen, what do I really need? I probably need a three to replace him, and I probably want a a backup five. So
Okay.
I would start somewhere. So technically, if you're going to trade him, you probably want to send him to either a team with one of his buddies, or you want to send him to a team that is probably playoff ready. Because I don't know if he wouldn't. Well, because in all realistic aspects, I don't think he accepts it like to waive his no trade clause if you trade him to Philly, kind of thing.
Right.
So if we're keeping in the East, I think the simplest first solution is just go to Cleveland with that first one, just one on one for Kevin Love, and you just make those three rotate, and you just worry about picking up some small forward, like maybe you could toss Dunleavy in there or some other small name, but like if you're the Cleveland GM and I'm offering you Melo for Love, are you doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would. I just think that Carmelo, I if the Golden State Warriors didn't exist, I would not do the trade just because Kevin Love is on a long-term deal. It's a bargain deal given what the market value is. I know it's a big contract, but Harrison Barnes is making more for probably doing not a lot. So I think I would do that just because it gives you another wing. Carmelo and LeBron can play positionless basketball, and I think you would see a lot of Team USA Mello, where the role gets simplified for him. It's catch and shoot, attack. We're not asking you to do too much. J.R. Smith benefited from that exact same transition where, hey, we have a simple game plan for you. You get the ball, you shoot. And right now, the biggest problem with Kevin Love is that he's not hitting open shots. He's been a tremendously effective player. He gets too much criticism, in my opinion, but he's not hitting his open threes. His 3 point shot is not there, and I think just having another wing, I think it's easier to throw Carmelo Anthony onto Andre Iguodala against their new and improved death lineup than it would be to throw Kevin Love on Iguodala. So yes, I would make that trade.
All right. Well, ideally, I think if I'm trading him on the Knicks, I'm trading him out west. Makes enough sense. The one team, if I want to do him a solid, is the San Antonio Spurs. But is there something like if you're the Spurs, can you really offer me legitimate fair value in return?
No, I don't think so.
So
There's nothing that I'd really want. I
like
mean,
a
that's
LaMarcus Aldridge
realistic. Like you're
for
not. No, I wouldn't do it for Aldridge. Obviously you'd do it for Kawhi, but there's no incentive for the Spurs to ever do that.
no.
What about the Clippers? Like, if you know Blake Griffin's going to walk, do you trade Carmelo for Blake Griffin to hope that it helps Chris Paul stay next summer? Like, do you think there would be any incentive there?
You know what? If I'm, well, I am James Dolan in this conversation, and I like that trade for two reasons. One, I think him and Kristaps actually will play really well together, and it moves Kristaps to center. Hopefully, he's gained enough weight, but in your eyes, he's a guy who can do that. And it's a three-man big rotation. Um, it puts Melo with Chris Paul. I think the scoring will be there. I think the Knicks do it because there's something about them that I think they secretly want to get out of that contract. Would you agree at all, or you think that's just fool's gold?
I think to an extent, yeah. I think it wouldn't hurt to have them kind of freed up from it. I don't think it's holding them back from being a contender or anything like that. But yeah, I think if they could, they would for the right value.
Or how about this? Just right back where it all started. Give you your own team again, the Denver Nuggets. They've got a plethora of B-rated players that could match really well.
I mean, Lala probably burns down the front office, probably burns down MSG if that
Okay, so this
happens.
probably has to go to a fairly big city then.
Yeah, that's why I think the Clippers
Oh,
might be the only
yeah,
solution.
actually,
But
can't be
would
the
you do that
Lakers.
if you're the Clippers? Like, do you think that helps you keep Chris Paul?
I, I really don't like the speed difference of Melo and Paul, unless I play Paul at power forward, I guess. I mean, sorry, Melo at power forward.
No, yeah, I'm thinking Melo at power
Oh
forward.
yeah, because then DeAndre's size makes up for anything that Melo wouldn't
Exactly.
have. You can stretch it out.
Melo should be a four.
I think their offense actually flows better with Melo than Blake on a simplified
Might
level.
help spacing.
It'll help the spacing. The only thing it doesn't give you is that second ball handler. As weird as that is, because Blake's a bigger guy, I believe Blake is a better second facilitator than Melo.
Yes,
So to
yes, he
create
is.
that offense. So I mean, in an ideal world, we're sending him to a big city, and the Lakers are just way too behind, right? Like there's nothing that. But if winning is not the thing for Melo, and the Lakers want a superstar, could that happen? Because they finally have their
I don't
guy.
think so.
Eh,
I don't think if you're the Lakers, you're not trading those pieces for Carmelo. You might just pursue him in free agency. I think that's the Lakers' plan. They're going to develop these guys. They're going to develop Ingram and all those guys. And when they have the opportunity in two
Oh,
years,
so you just said no to
they're
me,
going to
Mr. and
they're
Mrs. Bus.
they're going to chase Russell Westbrook. They're going to chase Carmelo in 2 years. They're going to chase all those guys. So I think they're just going to wait there and not give up assets when they're not at the point of contention. So and they appear to be a little more risk averse than they've been in the past. So I can't see that.
See,
So the
the
two options, the best options in the East, swap for Kevin Love or a swap with the Clippers for Blake Griffin. Either way, Carmelo's playing at power forward. I like that personally. So, Phil, thank you very much for coming on the show. I think it was a good one. I don't think we're going to agree on Carmelo, but I really hope he
waste of
goes.
talent.
I really hope he goes in a great situation because I'd love to be able to prove you wrong on this
Of course,
one.
he's going to a great
But
situation. He's making a ton of money. He lives in New York. He's got a beautiful wife, and he's winning
so as
rings
you
and
said,
titles for other teams that are not the team that's paying him. Like he's in the perfect situation. Go
as you
Melo.
said, he had a great career.
And
All right,
absolutely, I'm picking Dwayne Wade over him every time in a redraft. Sorry, just had to say that.
myself as well. All right, thanks for coming on. Thanks to our listeners. Remember that you can subscribe to us on SoundCloud. It'll update you as soon as we post a new podcast. More big stuff coming on throughout the summer. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, you can find me at Cavsanada. Phil is at Sporting Phil. Hit us up with
Way better
ideas.
follow.
Hit us
Yeah, you
up
got to follow this guy.
if you think one of us is right or wrong on this, or if there's something that you want us to discuss on a future podcast, let us know. But again, I'm Justin, and thanks for keeping it in the lounge.
Peace.